It should be going live in a few seconds. Do you see us yet, Commissioner Cook, live?
I'll try to open it again just a moment.
Is anyone else that's on the line on YouTube?
Karen, I am, and I'm still seeing that blue screen that Sean sees that says the important notice. That's the one we get on when we log into our computers.
I exited out and got back in, and I'm seeing it live streaming now.
Also.
All right, I'll try that.
Thank you.
Also. Yeah.
I think we're live then.
We're live now.
All right. With that, we do have all three commissioners on board in the remote offices. We have Keith on the desk with the controlling the phone and Karen controlling the computers. And my speaker's muted this morning for some reason, but somebody else's isn't. With that, we will carry on to the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first item on the agenda this morning, again, is approval of minutes for October 6th. Any correction, changes, or adjustments? If not, I'll sign them as presented.
I approve.
No changes.
All right, thank you. And as our next item on the agenda is returning or recurring public comments with the phone number is listed on the agenda and also on the YouTube face and also on AV Capture face. So call in and we'll take the call as rapidly as we can. Anything, Keith?
No, I have no callers yet, Mr. Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will move on to Todd, our Franklin County Weed Board budget for 2021.
Good morning.
Good morning, Todd.
Yeah, basically like to submit our budget that the Franklin County Weed Board of Directors has approved and submitted for your review. First, our biggest portion of our budget, of course, is our payroll. This year, we had one position, one of our staff members leave to take a federal position out of the state, and we decided not to refill that position, and we're going to plan to stay at 4 staff members for the year. So you'll notice our fairly substantial reduction in our payroll. I did add in a possible part-time, full-time position in case for 6 months of the summer, so that if we did end up needing some additional help, we could call someone in and help keep things up to snuff. I put also a 2% increase in salary across the board for all 4 of our positions. Our salaries were reviewed by Carly, and she thought that our changes were reasonable. So, any questions pertaining to salaries or payroll?
Questions, commissioners? Hearing none, go ahead, Todd.
Okay. One of our next bigger programs that we do is our cost share program. 2021 will be our 4th year running the cost share. We've made a few adjustments. We kind of fine-tune a little bit every year to try and make it work a little better. One of the things we've done is we've basically had a cutoff time so that we can maintain a certain dollar amount in the cost share, so that it basically helps the participants cover a greater portion of their cost share of spraying noxious weeds on areas throughout the county that are infested. Originally, we started kind of out in the Snake River country, hitting some of the yellow star, but since then we've actually done some on the west side of the county where there's some rangeland that had some yellow star, gotten some participation there as well. We've averaged around 3,500 acres a year that have been sprayed for yellow star, Scotch thistle, diffuse knapweed, and rush skeleton weed. So we plan to continue to offer this going into the future. It seems like it's been pretty well received by most of the participants in the county, and I think it's much needed, as noxious weed control is not a cheap process, especially considering the fact that the land that is most impacted is ground that has a lesser return potential. So,
Todd, are you? Is it showing signs of catching up at all on the east side of the county?
well, with Walla County next door, with a whole lot of yellow star that tends to blow across the river, it's an ongoing process, and there's a fair amount of area up along the Snake River itself specifically that we need to get into, and a lot of that's owned by a few landowners, so it gets kind of burdensome to have them jump in with both feet and do a whole bunch of acres without causing them some undue financial hardship. So we try and do a little bit at a time and get as much as we can get done in a year, and hopefully keep the thing moving in the right direction.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on the cost share program?
Hearing none, Todd, go ahead.
Okay, our third program is one that we've seems like we've seen pretty good performance on our road spray program, working with Public Works. This year we were going to cut a little bit short due to the COVID impact on funding, and but at the same time, having been shut off a little bit early this year doing the spraying, we ended up with about 250 to 300 acres worth of product left, so that we should be able to get some spraying done this fall, and then next spring hopefully we'll be able to get kind of back on track again, as I'm sure y'all are hoping to get back on a little bit more back on track with everything else as well. So we did go out with our pickups and do a fair amount of kochia spraying along roadsides that need a little bit additional address. So that I think kind of helped keep the kochia a little bit back out of the work zone for Public Works. So I'm hoping that paid off some big benefits. It definitely looks better where we did put our time and effort in. Insofar as the majority of the rest of our budget, I've made some minor changes here and there. Just fuel upped it a little bit. Communications have upped it a fair amount to cover costs that are coming through from IS. Aside from that, not too many major changes. Any questions on the balance of our budget? Any items there that spark any questions?
Yeah, Todd, this is Commissioner Didier. On the fuel, are you just anticipating fuel rising in the future?
Kind of yes and no. I try to plan for that eventuality, but also basically just kind of making sure that we're in a good enough position that we can handle it should it bounce up.
And then on the salaries and wages, I think you already explained this as you have lost a person, but you went from 232 down to 207 for budget. Todd, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
On your salary and wages, you went from 232,000 down to 207. Is that because of the loss of a man?
Yeah, basically we dropped having one person leave, and then I decided just to kind of run with the 4 staff positions and see how we go. We did, like as I mentioned, we did put in a part-timer to help in peak if we need for 6 months worth of work there. So,
Well, I just gotta applaud you for a budget that's staying reasonable and for the work that you guys are doing. I thank you much for what you're doing and around the county, and keep up the great work.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Todd, please.
Well, I think that pretty well covers the majority of what I had. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any further questions?
Commissioner Peck.
Yes.
Yeah. This is Commissioner Peck. Todd, in the past, we've had some pretty effective cooperative relationships with farmers taking care of the edges of their fields along our county roadways. Is there any change in practices in that regard, or any issues or effectiveness changes with that practice?
Well, I think that us being out doing what we can to kind of help keep that road edge clean, what pertains more to the county, it kind of seems, the neighbor sees you doing something that looks a little cleaner, a little neater, a little better than what has been done in the past. They tend to step up their game a little bit. And I don't know, that's kind of been my thought process on it. And I think, yes, I do believe in places, yes, we're looking a little better. And, there's always those that don't see that improvement and don't step up and make that effort in that direction. But
okay, the practice is still continuing, and you still believe it's a good cooperative process?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, this year.
I've always thought so. I just had heard some things. Nothing particularly negative, just some observations, and it seems to me like it's a good cooperative practice that ought to continue. I just want to get your take. Thanks.
Yep, thank you.
Any further questions for Todd on the budget proposal? I think everybody's had a chance to look at it ahead of time, so really hearing nothing else, I would entertain a motion for Resolution 2020-217.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of Resolution 2020-217 as presented.
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Todd, thank you for your time and the attention to the budget. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we will move on to vacating a portion of Joyce Road. Matt or Craig, who's going to handle this one, please?
This is Craig. I'll handle it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. A petition for the vacation of a portion of Joyce Road was received by the Public Works Department pursuant to Chapter 12.08.020 of the Franklin County Code. Public Works has brought the petition to the board for consideration. If the board decides to consider the petition, it must signify its intent with the resolution and order the county engineer to report on the proposed vacation and render our opinion as to whether the road should be vacated and abandoned. The board is not required to consider the petition, and I will be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
I can understand, even though there's no name on the petition, I do know the landowner, no one who's lived there for years. That section of road is basically should be a private section because it leads to nothing besides the landowner's ranch and paddocks. So once it goes by Cordis Road, it should be vacated.
Yes, we'll make a report if the board wishes us to consider the matter, and we'll bring it back for public hearing. Yes.
This is simply a request for approval of the petition, as I understand, and that merely is our approval to let the process go forward to the public hearing process. And so I'm guessing it might be best if I don't say too much about the particulars, right? Because in a public hearing, we don't want to prejudice anybody's thinking. But I do have a question about Joyce Road and the ownership of the land upon which that stretch of road is existing. Is that land owned by the applicant?
Yes, it is. And he also has a dairy that is an LLC, which I believe he is the owner of.
Yeah, I believe that was the case. I've been out there. It's been a few years ago, well before this petition, and I'm aware of this stretch. So thanks for bringing the petition forward. I don't have any other questions.
Questions, Commissioner Didier?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a resolution number for this one?
No, I don't think it. Well, there is two. No.
Yes.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, there is. I'm sorry. 2020-218.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So the last one was 217.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve resolution 2020-218, which is a consideration of petition to vacate a portion of Joyce Road and ordering the county engineer to report thereon.
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Craig and
Thank
Matt.
you. Thank you.
So with that, it brings anything on the phone yet, Keith?
No, sir.
Karen, you could probably bring back up YouTube instead of the budget. Or whoever's handling that. But next item on the agenda is paying the bills. Do we have some this morning?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we've got two items this morning. Just looking at the agenda, it looks like payroll's listed first, so I'll do that one first. Move for approval of salary clearing payroll and emergency management payroll dated today, October 20th, 2020, in the total amount of $997,878.00.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Chairman, the second fiscal item this morning is fund expenditures. Move for approval of fund expenditures dated October 20th, 2020 in the total amount of $960,846.59. That's 960,846.59.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That was the final.
That's correct. Final, that was 2 of 2.
Okay. Our next item on the agenda is our consent agenda, and it's 1 through 8 this morning.
And Mr. Chairman, move for approval of consent agenda as presented, and happy to entertain any questions as part of the motion.
I second with no discussion.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I've got questions on a few of these, if I
Okay.
might. On item number 4, this is Franklin County Elections Monitoring Agreement. That service provider is Advanced Protection Services. And there's 2 things that caught my eye in the contract, and I understand our legal counsel is online, so I'm hoping they can provide some assurance that we're good to go on this, or if not, what we might need to do. The paragraph 2.3 indicates an automatic renewal of the contract, and it doesn't have, that I can find, or that I was able to find, an end date. And my basic question is, can we contract in perpetuity like this? And then the second question on the same agreement, and I realize on paragraph 2.3, the auto renewal, that the contract itself likely has a termination clause, but the auto renewal piece struck me as odd. And then in the same contract in paragraph 3.0, it authorizes the contractor to automatically increase their charges to us by up to 7%, and that does not appear to be a negotiated process or one that would even require our approval. In fact, approving this contract looks like it would give them the approval to increase up to 7% without even consulting us. So if our civil counsel is comfortable with a contract, I'm not necessarily hard opposed to moving forward, but these things strike me as odd, and I'd like some input, please.
Commissioners, this is Sean Sant. I haven't seen that particular contract. I was just trying to pull that up now, and it doesn't appear that it's in the link to be able to actually pull up and review that particular contract, just the item that's listed in the agenda. Do you have a separate one separately, as we review several contracts, and I would like to have that in front of me, or if we could table that for continuing a week if there's time before services, and we could get back to the board with any concerns that the board might have.
Commissioners, I may just interject that on the terms of service, paragraph 2.3 that Commissioner Peck pointed out, it does give us an opportunity to terminate the contract with 60 days notice, written notice to the contractor. So if the board is feeling like we're not getting the appropriate service for the fee or some other reason, we do have the ability to terminate that contract.
Yeah, and Keith, I appreciate that, and I think I alluded to that in my remarks. It isn't that we can't cancel it, it's the notion that we don't have to take an affirmative action to renew it. And there's been some discussion in local government circles of late as to the duration for which you can contract for services. And 2.3 is not really my bigger concern. It's 3.0, which says that after the expiration of the agreed term in paragraph 2.3, so that would be 12 months, from the date hereof, providers shall be permitted from time to time to increase the monthly charges by an amount not to exceed 7% for each term, and subscriber, that would be us, Franklin County, agrees to pay such increase as invoiced, unless there's some other quoted negotiated number. So if this is acceptable language for our civil folks, then I'm okay with it. It just read a lot of these over the years, and for this one struck me as a little out of the ordinary. Normally, we're pretty precise on who the parties are to the agreement, what the term is, what the amounts are, and we don't stray from that without it coming back to the board. I would also note that this one is for security services in elections, and timing is of the essence. So unless our legal counsel has some real concern, I'm okay with going ahead and approving it, given that time is of the essence. We're in the middle of an election. We should have these security services. So I'll leave it there.
Any further comments or questions?
Just wanting to know if our legal counsel is comfortable with us moving forward and taking action on this based on what I've read.
I was just able to pull up that particular contract. I didn't previously review this matter. Jen, I'll defer to you if you happen to review this specific contract.
I'm still
Typically, though, I do know that we do have some contracts that have renewal provisions on there. For instance, our legal research contract with Westlaw or West Services now, that renews with a certain caveat of certain increases that occur. But I think, as Keith pointed out, there is a provision here that if the parties are dissatisfied, there is an exit clause that allows the county to get out of that. So, I mean,
okay.
The increases of the monthly, yeah. Paragraph 3.0, though, after the expiration, so essentially what the county just needs to be aware of now is if we are agreeing to a contract for the term of service, which in here it's 12 months, recognizing that they can submit an increase to the monthly charges. It does concern that there isn't a specific notification process. Usually there is a mechanism where they can provide us advance notice of the increase, similar to like you would see in rental agreements, and then the party would have an opportunity to decide whether or not they want to agree or continue. But like he pointed out, if we don't like the increased notification that we receive that is capped by 7%, if there's something that we do not agree with, we can terminate that at any time. So I think that would cover the concerns that we would usually have. And I would probably suggest also it's always a good idea probably to have some end date where a contract is brought back to the board's attention, reconsideration, if for no other reason, simply to reevaluate whether or not that is a good value. We do periodically look at our similar contracts to see whether or not we are still getting a good value for services, even when they have a provision for increases. So that answers the board's question.
Yeah, the real issue here is the process and the procedure. In this particular case, a 7% increase on this would certainly be de minimis, meaning it's such a small dollar amount that it would be inconsequential. 7% on the $45, as anybody can calculate, is less than $5. So it's not that it's a fiscal matter as much as it is a contracting practice. And I'm comfortable moving forward. Just I would ask that in the future we maybe refrain from contracts that have automatic rate increases where we're not given the benefit of advance notice. Seems like a basic requirement.
Commissioner, if I may interject just briefly, I did get some information from the elections department, and they are a little concerned that timing is of the essence. As you know, ballots have already started coming in through the mail, and they have.
Yeah, I
felt,
think I've already spoken to
Yeah.
that at length, Keith. I'm prepared to move forward with it because timing is of the essence.
Thank you.
Hey, if there's no further questions, all in favor of the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, I had one other. This is on the medical contract. Perhaps there's been an update in the last few days, but the basis for selecting the particular contract or contractor in this case didn't stand out to me. There's a chart that shows the bid amounts, and the one we're selecting at first glance doesn't appear to be the low cost bidder. I realize that there are other elements of cost, like the call out services, that may or may not have been included in one of the bids or even two of the bids. And so for the purposes of having it on the record, because I didn't see it in a resolution, I would ask that Keith give us a little bit of on the record background explanation as the basis for selecting this particular contract. I just feel like our read aheads fell short in that department.
Yes, certainly, Commissioner. Thank you. Jennifer Johnson from the Prosecuting Attorney's Office, Steve Soltemeyer, the commander in the jail facility, and myself each independently reviewed the proposals that came in. And then we discussed our analysis of those proposals. And it was just apparent that the Fleck Gambone Lopez proposal was the preferred vendor. We felt like that there were too many open-ended questions with the ideal options, that it would require a longer learning curve, as it were, and some additional time and expense on our part to be able to accept that. So we made the recommendation to go with the second option. The NAF Care proposal, a very positive one, very good. They do this all over the country, but because it was the high cost provider and more of a for lack of a better term, a Cadillac type plan than what we felt was needed in the facility, we made the recommendation to the board to accept the Fleck Gambone Lopez proposal. But we have reviewed all three of those in depth. And I think Steve Soltemeyer is on the phone. I don't know, Steve, if you want to add any additional comments to that. Might be.
Yeah, Steve Soltemeyer. And one of the other things that we had looked at is the experience that was brought in by the Fleck Gambone Lopez agency was higher in the experience that it was bringing forward for us. And looking at what was being brought in by Ideal Options, we just felt was that learning curve that he had talked about, that we thought best not to be brought in.
Okay, well, thanks. Just to feedback what I believe I just heard you say for the record is that it was a combination of qualifications and experience, most cost effective overall, and completeness in terms of a proposal that addressed all of our needs, had minimal learning curve and open questions, and addressed the call out costs. So a combination of all those factors. And again, I'm not suggesting that this isn't the right choice. I just felt like that in this particular case, we might have done a little bit more in terms of establishing the permanent record as to why this particular provider was selected. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, any further comments or questions on the consent agenda 1 through 8?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. With that, I would ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All right. Thank you. Moves us on. Keith, anything on the phone yet?
No, sir.
Okay. Then it's up for your time, please.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I have before us today 2 items that I would ask for your support for. The first being Resolution 2020-227. This is a program that we have developed very rapidly with the Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce as the primary contractor, as it were, for us to get additional funds available to us through the CARES Act out to businesses in the Franklin County business community. The regional chamber has a very close relationship with many of these businesses. Some of them either applied for and were not qualified for the funds that we ran through the TRIDEC program. We have not exhausted the resources, but TRIDEC is still working on the phase 2 and the remainder of that program. Didn't feel like they could take on additional work at this time. And so this program that we've worked out with the Tri-Cities Regional Chamber will make these rapid response grants available to members of the business community. And so the resolution before you is a consideration of setting aside an additional $683,000 in total for that program. And the Tri-Cities Chamber will make direct contact with businesses to seek out those that are need of additional funding from the COVID shutdown that have been negatively affected, and get this money out to them as quickly as we can. So perhaps let's discuss that item first, and then I'll go into the second resolution if we could.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Packer. Keith, first off, appreciate your efforts that when funds become available, either from the federal government or the state, that you get right on it and we move as quickly as possible to get funds out to local businesses. And 2 questions. One, you alluded to the fact that TRIDEC really is a little saturated and isn't able to take on additional load at this time. Certainly understand that. But you made the reference that some people are not qualified for the program administered by TRIDEC. So my first question would be, what is the difference between the TRIDEC program and the Chamber program with respect to qualifications and the character of the program? And then the second question, and certainly have great respect for the Tri-City Chamber and their capacity to do this kind of work, but these are Franklin County funds. Did we perhaps consider offering this opportunity and this work to our own Pasco Chamber?
Yes and no. Let me kind of explain how that came together. I've got some additional discussions I need to have with the Pasco Chamber, but the Tri-City Regional Chamber does have contacts throughout Franklin County. They have identified businesses that only have a Franklin County connection. So it's a little broader than perhaps the focus of just the Pasco Chamber. But I would reassure the board that even though the Tri-Cities Chamber has work in Benton County, they have segregated this where these dollars would go specifically to Franklin County businesses.
I would just also note, Keith, if I might, pardon the interruption, but we have a Connell Chamber as well, and if there's an opportunity at some point for them to maybe partner with a Tri-City Chamber, because frankly, no one's going to know our businesses better than our local chambers on the ground that are closest to them.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And there's a pretty good likelihood that we will still have some CARES Act money to distribute. And I would anticipate using these local chambers to do that. Also, the Tri-Cities Chamber has assured us that they will include the local chambers in helping do the analysis of those applicants that can get approved, and making sure that that we're hitting the right places to award these. So it is in essence already a bit of a joint effort that may not be just spelled out in the contract that we have with the Tri-Cities Regional Chamber, but they are working in conjunction with the local chambers. And I've heard specifically from the Pasco Chamber that they are eager and willing to participate and help in any way that they can. So they are not excluded from this discussion. And it, as I said, it may be very likely that we ask them for some additional help in getting all of the CARES Act funding out to the local businesses. As to
Okay, well, I wasn't aware that those conversations were taking place, so thank you for doing that.
As to the difference in qualifications, there's not a lot of difference. The essential requirements of having a current business license and being current with L&I and those kinds of things are going to be the same. But there are a couple of areas that the TRIDEC grants were not eligible for funding that these rapid response grants will be eligible. There's certain payroll costs and a couple of other minor things. I don't have all of those listed right in front of me. I'd be happy to sit down with you if that helps to go through that. But the differences in eligibility are actually very minor, but there are a couple of differences.
Keith, this is Commissioner Didier. Customarily, is this the same percentage of take that TRIDEC's taken from the CARES Act money, over 12%?
Yeah, that's a good question. I probably should have pointed that out. Actually, it would appear that this is a higher percentage, but the reason is there's about $40,000 of the total 83 that we have set aside in the event that this triggers a federal audit. The typical threshold for triggering a federal audit is $750,000 of federal funds being used. And we did not want to dump that responsibility of paying for that audit on the Tri-Cities Regional Chamber, because the expectation is that the CARES Act funding will pay for that. So even though the ASR and the resolution shows that the Tri-Cities Chamber would receive a total of $83,000, 40 of that is set aside in the event that a federal audit is required. There's a couple of other factors that could participate in that or change that. One, Benton County is working on a similar program, but they have not yet committed to it. And if they do commit to it, then they would probably absorb a proportionate share of the audit cost if such were required. And secondly, if no federal audit is required, then that money would come back to the county and we would not have to incur all of that. But I wanted to make sure we set that aside in the event that that audit was incurred. And audit costs we estimate to be around $40,000. So that's the reason that this management fee seems to be a little higher on a percentage basis than TRIDEC and some of the others that we've seen. Okay, and secondly is the Pasco Chamber of Commerce and the Connell Chamber, are they going to receive any of that $40,000 or $45,000 that the Tri-City Chamber, if they're working together, are they going to get compensated also? That's not intended in this particular resolution, but if we need to add additional contracts with them that compensates them for their work, we can do that. Also, they are eligible to apply for grants as well under the CARES Act for their own costs. Okay, thank you. So if there's no other questions, I'd be happy to ask for a motion to approve that resolution.
So Keith, Commissioner Peck again, I'm just going back and rereading this. I'm not seeing anything that alludes to our local chambers and their involvement. What steps do you anticipate, or should we anticipate, in terms of getting our local chambers involved? It isn't, as it might appear on the surface, just about them sharing in the administrative bounty of doing this. It's the fact that I really think that government closest to the people governs best. In this case, chambers closest to businesses know best what those needs are. It would seem to me that having their input could be pretty valuable. Do you have any thoughts on going forward how we get them involved in this particular contract or program?
Yes, absolutely. I've had conversations with Lori Matson and Stephanie Swanberg over at the Tri-Cities Chamber regarding how we put this agreement together. There will, in terms of process, there will essentially be a group that meets each week to review the applications and make the decision of whether they qualify and whether the grant award is awarded. And they have invited the local chambers to participate in that discussion. So the local chambers will have direct access to know who has been approved for grants, and they can bring their lists of their membership and business contacts that they have to reach out to those groups to ask them to apply for the grant. So they're very much.
That's great. That's wonderful. That addresses the first part. What about any opportunity to compensate those local chambers for those efforts and the expertise that they bring to the table at those meetings? Is there an opportunity somehow to do that?
Yeah, that would probably be a separate agreement from this one, but we certainly can do that. So I'll get moving on that.
I'd appreciate your efforts to look at that and see if we can. I don't want to ask them to do the same work that someone else is doing out of county, for which we're paying that out of county activity, and not likewise compensating our own home team. Thanks much.
Understood. Thank you.
Any further questions?
I would just like to add also that the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce also should be included in that, Keith.
Yes.
That's an excellent observation. Thank you, Commissioner Didier.
Okay. With that, I'm sorry, I forget, is it 227, Keith, was it?
Yeah, yes, that's resolution 2020-227.
As presented. Move for approval.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of, I don't think we've had a motion for approval on this yet, have we?
We have not.
Okay, so I move for approval of resolution 2020-227 as presented, with the understanding that the county administrator will seek further opportunities for the Franklin County-based chambers, all of them, to play an important and compensated role in these activities. Thank you.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Keith.
Thank you. The second item is similar in nature, but it addresses a very specific issue within Franklin County. And it's designed to help those businesses that are struggling to bring their employees back to work because of the lack of capacity in childcare options. We have been working not only with Benton County, but the city of Pasco and other municipalities in the area to bring this discussion forward. I briefly mentioned it in a prior meeting about the need for additional funding for keeping childcare centers open. so that the parents can actually return to work. And so working through local child care agencies, we've asked to put together this program that would put, I think it's $500,000 towards the child care needs within Franklin County. Let me.
Any questions on that?
I will just add that we do not expect to hire a contractor to do this work, but we will have a direct relationship with the grantees through this program. We're asking for $500,000 to be allocated. It'll go to groups like YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, and any state licensed child care provider in the area. There's a group called Child Care Aware. They provide a coach or a liaison with each licensed child care provider in the state, and so they will be the ones that will help us vet those providers that have incurred COVID costs and are in need of this funding. And so we will work very closely with them as well as the Department of Human Services to make sure that this funding is going to those locations that are struggling to stay open as a result of the shutdown.
So Keith, Commissioner Peck, in the read ahead, there was I think an important reference to why these child care providers are in fact struggling. And my sense from reading it was that as COVID set in and more parents began working from home, the demand for child care services plummeted, and some of those child care providers either went and did other things or had to close their business or whatever, reducing the overall capacity of the system. And now that we're working toward getting kids back in school, the need is reemerging, but those child care providers are no longer present. Did I read that right? And if so, it makes sense to me. I just wanted to kind of flesh that out for the record.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You're spot on in your analysis there.
So Keith, this is Commissioner Didier. If perchance we have a executive order by the president to open schools back up nationwide, what would happen to these funds then? Would we be put back into helping businesses, or because I think we're getting close to getting these schools opened up?
Yeah. That's certainly a possibility. If it was determined that the funding was not needed, then yes, it would stay with the county and we could use it for other purposes. Part of our challenge is if such an executive order or similar state or local decision were made, that would have some impact on it, knowing that we as of right now, only have until November 30th to expend CARES Act funding. So that only leaves us about 5 weeks to get there. I don't anticipate that even if schools start bringing students back in the Franklin County area, that would happen all at once, or that they would be bringing those students back completely 5 days a week. So I anticipate that this need's going to remain even beyond our CARES Act timeline of November 30th.
At this point, down for North Franklin, they aren't even talking about going back full until after the first of the year, and that's a possibility only. It's not that's not a definite issue yet. So I have to agree with Keith. I don't think we're anywhere close to going full-time, full school. Further questions, comments?
So Commissioner, I guess there is one thing. Since we don't know if and when schools will reopen, and I agree with your assessment about the timing of that, and these funds have to be expended by November 30th, does it make sense to expend these funds to reinforce the economic viability of childcare providers for a purpose that it sounds like we don't believe is going to take place? Keith, what are your thoughts? I'm inclined, by the way, to go ahead and use these funds for the child care providers to try and get them healthy. If nothing else, to try and reduce further closures, because at some point we are going to need them. So it is beneficial in that context. But any thoughts on that?
Yes, it is important to the local child care providers, in part because they have a difficult time staffing their facilities, and they're getting more and more desperate to be able to hire people, and having the financial resources to do it will go a long ways to keep them open for at least the foreseeable future. I would expect that if the problem lingers into next year, as Commissioner Cook described, you're likely to see some action at the federal level, but that's probably not going to happen until after the election, depending on the makeup of Congress and the administration. I have no way to predict what future programs might look like, but I've concluded that there is an immediate need in Franklin County to support this program.
Well, and I would just add, Keith, that as my fellow commissioner noted or questioned, if we don't use these funds for this, would these funds be redirected to local businesses? I just remind us all that these child care providers are in fact local tax-paying small businesses. So this money is going to local business, whether it's through this program or otherwise.
Correct.
All right, so we do have a resolution 2020-228.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of resolution 2020-228 as presented.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Keith, what else do we have today?
Just a brief update. We are working with the City of Pasco, the Benton Franklin Public Utilities District, and other utility providers locally. We will hopefully have an agreement. I'm not sure if we'll have it by next Tuesday, but within the next couple of weeks, to provide some utility assistance to Franklin County homes and businesses that have had COVID-19 impacts that have caused them to get behind in their utility bills. So we're still working on that program, and hopefully we'll be able to bring that before the board shortly. That's really all the official business I have this morning for decision purposes. I do want to request an executive session when you're ready for me to make that request.
Okay. Anything on the phone?
Make sure here.
Any phone calls, Keith?
I'm looking.
Sorry.
No, I have no callers on the phone.
All right. I would expect, Karen, that you'll call us then, or how do we want to do this exec session?
Correct. So we'll get off the main line and I will call you on a conference line.
Then after the executive session, we will ask you to rejoin this comm line to reopen the public session for the conclusion of the meeting.
All right. So at this time, we will.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, for the record, state the purpose of the executive session.
Please.
Yes, I would request up to 30 minutes for an executive session under RCW 42.30 .110, paragraph 1, subparagraph I, potential litigation. And I do not expect that we would need a decision or action afterward.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we will go into executive session and wait for a phone call.
Looks like we're live.
Yes.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cook. Commissioner Cook, can you hear me? Commissioner Peck, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Commissioner Didier?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes, I'm on.
Jen?
Yes.
Okay. We're trying to get Commissioner Cook reconnected. There he is. Is that Commissioner Cook?
We back on?
Yes.
Okay.
So go ahead. You can announce procedurally where we are.
Oh, all right, we'll carry on from there then. We have used up our first 30 minutes of the executive session with no decisions made. We need to go back in for, and at this point, an additional 45 minutes. So we're back into under the same RCW. the meeting.
John, thank you. We'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, John.
Yep. Take care.
Looks as though we are live. We have ended our executive session, actually the second portion of the executive session, with no decisions made. Commissioners, we have anything else for the good of the board today?
Nope, I'm good.
I think I'm good for now, Commissioner Cook. Thank you.
Okay. Keith, anything for us and wrap it up?
No, I think we're finished.
Okay. Any concerns, Karen?
No, sir.
All right. Well, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.